On tonight's South Bank show, the Icelandic pop star Bjork. Hello, Bjork is an original voice in pop music today, as well as being Iceland's most famous export. Although she's only 31, her career spans 20 years and encompasses jazz, folk, punk, classical, dance and electronic music. Her experimental approach to pop has resulted in new fusions and unusual combinations across musical styles. She's worked with people as diverse as Tricky and the Brodsky Quartet and written songs for Madonna and Bernardo Bertolucci. The South Bank show travelled with Bjork to her native Iceland and to southern Spain, where she was recording her third solo album.
We live on a mountain, right at the top. This beautiful view from the top of the mountain. Every morning I walk towards the edge and throw little things off like car parts, bottles and cutlery, or whatever I find lying around. It's become a habit, our way to start the day. I go through this
How many singers have anything to say, let alone anything original to say, or an original way of getting it across? She just has a very unique way of seeing things.
I think people are always scared of new things. If you want to make something happen that hasn't happened before, you've got to allow yourself to make a lot of mistakes. Then the real magic will happen. Because if you just play it really safe, you won't get any treats.
You cannot say that Björk is copying anybody. This personality, that's absolutely unique. The warmth, the mature attitude to life, but a heart of a child, and her Icelandic way of being.
I come from Iceland, and this harbour is probably my roots, you know, and the weather and the mountains. For me, this is the heart of Reykjavik. I never try to do things that are Icelandic, you know. I don't sort of go out my way. Just the fact that like all my family 1,000 years back are Icelandic, and I was born here with all those things inside me, and with that face and this body, you know, and with these influences, I think that's enough. I don't have to. It's so much subconsciously there. I don't have to focus on it consciously as well. But yeah, there is a big chunk there.
I live by the ocean. During the night, I dive into it This is where I'm staying. This is my home.
Well, I always sang since I was a kid. It has always been like my natural reaction to things. My stepfather, who started with my mother when I was 4, and he played me a lot of music and had a lot of time for me. And he used to sit with me every evening sometimes. And we would write down a lot of lyrics, we'd go through things, we'd pick up the chords. And he used to be in a top 40 band in Iceland.
Voru vitringarnir 3 frá Austurlöndum. Kaspar, Melchior og Baltasar.
Það mikil verkefni.
They sent me to classical music school when I was 5. And I was there for 10 years. It was very conservative, but I was a bit of a rebel. I would do my own little projects in the corner. I would get a lot of freedom. I would talk to a lot of, that's how I got introduced to like Jesse Stockhausen and electronic music. You know, I basically got introduced to all music there is. I mean, in European, at least, let's say 400 or 500 years. And even though I ended up deciding that majority of it was not maybe my cup of tea, at least I knew it existed. So I could like say, okay, I've dealt with this, you know? So I think very quickly I said, okay, you got classical music, you got pop, you got jazz, and everybody thinks their stuff is great and the rest is crap. I just really quickly loved introducing my grandparents to Jimi Hendrix stuff, or my mum to classical stuff, or bringing jazz records to school, you know. And then it just kind of came out that when I started being in bands, because I was so kind of obsessed with new things getting made, that I kind of ended up just being on the microphone, you know. But it was very natural process. I've been singing professionally more or less since I was about 11, 12.
Góði Guð fallei mömmu frá, hún háttar mig og baðar og mér hjá. Svo klæðir hún mig í náttföt hlý. Guð blessi pappa, ég glemdi því.
It's a small town and people knew I did gigs, I played flute, I sang. And then this guy wanted to make a children's record. It sold 5,000 copies, which is gold in Iceland. But then they wanted to do, then it came out in the record company, and the record company was like, they wanted to do another one, but I didn't want to. So I said, okay, that's it. Because I felt very awkward. I was doing interviews and all sort of stuff, and people recognized me in the street and my school. I got much more attention than I wanted before I asked for it, where I think a lot of people don't get the attention till long after they want it. So I immediately sorted out in my head that that's not what I want. I want to make music.
She can be extremely childlike in her voice, or it can be totally in command and like an absolute queen. This sort of exaggeration of emotions is what really comes through in her voice.
I'm violently happy, 'cause I love you. I'm violently happy, but you're not here. I'm violently happy. Come calm me down before I get into trouble.
quite a mad century for Iceland. Because like 100 years ago, my grandparents' generation, they were brought up in like mud houses. The lifestyle was like Middle Ages, you know? And then we became independent in 1944. And we became, after World War II, like, I think the 5th richest country in the world or something, like really quickly. It developed in maybe 80 years what, say, England has developed in 400 years. It's so quick that it's almost violent. Iceland was a colony for 600 or 700 years, and it was treated very badly by the Danish. And we were not allowed to play in music and dance. It was supposed to be an act from the devil or something. And so what we got obsessed with was storytelling and the sagas, you know. That's all our culture is basically literature, very literature-based. Probably the most important music in Iceland was half talking and half singing, kind of chanting.
Hreiðrum ganga fuglar frá, flöktan dranga bjarga, sólarvanga syngja hjá, sálma langa og marga. Björk, she uses her voice in a very specific way. There is a specific sound in her voice. And you can say the same about the voice of the old Icelandic choirmen who were reciting the rímur. It's not a singing voice, not exactly. It's not a speaking voice. It's somewhere in between.
While you are away, my heart comes undone, slowly unravels. Like a ball of yarn, the devil collects it with a grin. Our love in a ball of yarn, he'll never return it. Will you come back? We'll have to make new love. Never returning. When you come back, we'll have to make new love. Never returning. And Kelly, you'll never returning. So when you come back, we'll have to make new love.
The women of the sagas were very strong, and Björk is one of them. It is said about the Icelanders that they are bold in art. They do not calculate the steps. If I do this today, this will happen tomorrow. They do today what they have to do today. All that's very Icelandic, because we live with this nature and the elements that we have to defy all the time. We are not thinking about it every day, but it forms our character, of course.
I think when you come from a place where nature can kill, I mean, you could literally not be here in a week. That sort of makes you humble, and I think it's healthy. It puts you in your place. If there is such a thing as Icelandic characteristics, we're talking about an individual who's fiercely independent. It's like so self-sufficient, it's like arrogant. And like anarchy is just like people who invented anarchy like 100, 200 years ago. You know, Icelandic people is like so.
renaissance of Icelandic music was happening in 79-80, and so that scene was has been called the Icelandic punk scene, because that scene, it was like so much do-it-yourself. It was not like a political thing like right-wing or left-wing or anything like that. We were singing in Icelandic, and we were dealing with Icelandic reality, and we were putting out our records and doing basically everything ourselves.
It was a, very stupid local sense of humor. Bunch of 16-year-old terrorists drinking absinthe that we smuggled from Spain and writing terrible tunes and being arrested a lot of times and having art exhibitions and making our own films and basically our sort of terrorism, if you want. Sort of sabotaging what we thought was really snotty. I think the people that ended up forming Cook and the Shoe Cubes, Bad Taste, they were bound to meet, because in such a small town, having same obsession, basically being terrified of mediocrity. I think that was always been our biggest enemy. Mediocrity, materialism, narrow-mindedness, small town mentality. And we'd do anything to break that down.
The girl has a voice like an ice pick, such a pure sound. When the Sugar Cubes played with U2, I would be preparing in the dressing room, and even if I couldn't hear the band, I couldn't hear anything. I could just hear this low rumble through these, stadium walls or whatever we happened to be playing. I could always seem to hear that voice. It seemed to travel through metal and concrete and glass and, 50,000 punters, and I, just went straight to my heart. What can I tell you?
There was nothing like it. There was a void in the world of pop music, and suddenly there was a light. And it happened to be us, and we were from Iceland, and we were the Sugar Cubes. Somebody told me that Birthday had been chosen single of the week in Melody Maker, and my response was, oh shit, because I knew it was trouble. And boy, it did prove out to be trouble for us.
There was companies that came here and got offered us 60 trillion billions, and we just told them all, to F-U-C-K off, because we were being terrorists and all that. And that took about 1.5 years that we just kept sending them back.
The agenda of the Sugar Cubes was never to become, world famous. We were doing this for fun. 2,
even 3 of the Shoe Cubes were probably the most promising poets or writers of Iceland's new generation. And they were finding themselves, they hadn't written a letter for 2 years. Because they were doing sound checks in Texas and Alabama and doing guitar solos, and which is kind of funny. I mean, it is funny, but it's only funny for so long,
The trappings of the business, I think, were the end of the Sugar Cubes. We just had enough, and we were all friends, and so instead of spoiling a very good friendship, we destroyed a business relationship.
I had been making music for theater, for film, pop stuff, jazz stuff, experimental stuff, electronic stuff. Basically try everything, basically work with everybody in Iceland, but always from other people's visions. wanted to make my own album. It was time for me then to write songs about me. I was 27. I thought, okay, you know, you're a coward if you don't try more things. It was a very big decision to move, mostly because of my son, and I'm a really family-orientated person. When I came to London, I was very looking, and I was very sure that I was gonna do an album that hadn't been done before. So the people I was most attracted to, and the scene I was most attracted to when I came here, was people who knew as little as I did about what was gonna happen. Not people who had already established things, but people that were still trying to sort of entering the unknown, if you want, and trying to discover something that hadn't been discovered before. London is gorgeous because it functions as a brewing pot for people from all over the planet on similar missions to me. And if I don't talk to them regularly and I don't see them play regularly, I just go mad. You know, in Iceland, I was very much the odd one out, you see. I just need to know that I'm not the only one. And the people that ended up in my band, without me planning it so, were like one person from Iran, one from India, one from Turkey, one from Cyprus, one from Barbados. It's a bit like Immigrants United. For me, the whole Britpop thing and the Oasis thing and the whole guitar thing is this kind of British scare of losing Britishness and the immigrants taking over in that. English people like the Britpop scene, they just seem to repeating and trying to sort of hold the Victorian flag alive, but it's just, you know, dead, you know. And it don't seem to be doing anything fertile.
Nostalgia is the order of the day for the most here. Except in dance culture and club culture, people are looking to the future, which is, I think, why Bjork was attracted to that.
So how do you feel, all right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I keep coming up, keep missing you. So
I know, I haven't been here for a while.
Good stuff, yeah?
Yeah, one's excellent, like really good underground minimal techno with some really mad lock grooves on it as well, but kind of like sort of 80s disco sort of stuff it sounds like. But this is one from Germany, which is the guy's called Dynamo, which is really, really cool. It's kind of like on that Herbert sort of tip, which is really good.
If she is shopping around, she's the Imelda Marcos of good ideas. And what's wrong with that? I mean, that's what you do, isn't it? You shop around.
I can't wait to take you seriously, man. What are you doing? Just obsessed with people with exciting ideas, and it's a bit of a weakness of mine, really. I've got no interest in working with people who do what I tell them to do. You know, it's just no point. I might as well just do it myself then. So I'd much rather work with people who are just as strong as me and preferably stronger. And so it's like I give 9 billion and they give 9 billion or whatever, and that's the kick.
She is able to hold on to her identity, to her own style, no matter who she collaborates with. And a lot of the musical combinations that she has have never been done before.
Come to me, I'll take care of you, protect you. Calm down, you're exhausted. Come lie down, you don't have to
In 1993, Bjork released her first solo album of original work. It turned her into an international star. She followed with a second album in 1995, and then, after 4 years in the limelight, the pressure got too much. She vented her feelings on a journalist at Bangkok airport.
I had all these songs inside me, and the only way to get them out of my system was to put me in extreme danger. I think you can only do that for so long. So I did that for 4 years, and then it just exploded. When you've gone to that sort of speed of living, like 9,000 miles per hour, you don't exactly fade down. I think you sort of explode, really, and crash. That's what I did.
Björk does not need adoration for her to make her music. And being stared at in the street and whispering, "There's Björk," does her more harm than anybody. People can, they don't know how much harm they are doing.
Iceland's pop queen leaving her home in West London late this afternoon, still distressed at the discovery she'd been the target of a crazed fan's attempt to harm her.
It's just kind of a very sad thing, you know, obviously when somebody shoots their face off, you know. It's terrible. I'm not sure if I'll dream very properly for a while.
You must be very frightened when they see. These are the last pictures of the bomber. His body was discovered after neighbours called police. Bizarrely, he'd filmed himself making the chemical explosive.
People shouldn't take me too literally and get involved in my personal life. I make music for people, you see. Basically, the bomb got sent to my house and I moved away from London and freaked out in Spain. And then I realised it was just kind of one guy who did that, really. You can't blame that on a nation, can you? You know? But it doesn't matter. When that happens to you, it doesn't matter what people say to you. There's no logic. It's just when you've gone through that experience, you just want to go and never come back, you know?
For much of the past year, Bjork has been living in southern Spain, where she recorded her third solo album.
I think there's something very special about living at the edges of continents, and it just feels completely different. And it shouldn't, you know, that you look out the window and you can see another continent over there. And it's just kind of like, it's a really healthy turn on somehow. The idea that every morning you could wake up and literally go to Africa. When I lived by the ocean there, I used to wake up every morning and have to walk for like an hour and like cross. And then I felt like I was in Spain. And then I could work. And I wake up the morning after and I hadn't just grasped the idea. So I had to do that for a month. And then I moved up here to the mountain. And the only way I can take all this in, because it's just so outrageous, and I keep just thinking I'm just looking at the back. It's just like they're going to pull the curtains in a sec. These are the things that I own, that I usually have in my house, where I do all the demos. So we set this up and brought this down to Spain. When I did debut and post, they were very much like greatest hits of my musical passions for all my life. And I knew it would take 2 albums to do that. That's why I called them debut and post, before and after, of getting rid of the back catalogue almost, you know, gracefully, you know, because you can only move on if you do that, you know. So this is like a fresh start for me. And that's why I want to call this album homogenic or genus or genius or whatever. I'm still working on that, because it's one flavor. It's just me now, you know, here. And it's going to be, instead of like all these different instruments, it's just going to be beats, strings, and voice. einhvern tíma myndavélina fara í taugarnar á okkur, þá látið mig vita, af því að þetta númer 1. I knew that this album would be like back to Iceland, sort of what I'm about. But it's very hard to kind of start from complete scratch with no tradition whatsoever. But there were some pioneers who were trying to look at the landscape and the country and try to change that, what they saw and what they felt into audio.
There are certain Icelandic composers, and when they compose Icelandic music, they, you know, try to imitate geysers or volcanoes, because the landscape in Iceland is very rough. It's, you know, we don't have like this, you know, trees. We don't barely have any trees. We have a lot of lavas, we have a lot of volcanoes, and there's a lot of outbursts of, you know, whether suddenly the wind comes or snowstorms. And that kind of sounds, I think she's looking after, and she's talked about that. She wants more of this raw sound, not this beautiful European sound maybe.
To find that voice is very challenging, you know. And it's almost like you have to invent your own roots. And that's one of the reasons why I got the 8 string players. I wanted them all to be Icelandic. Það finnst mér mega alveg vera, þú veist, svona meiri, það þarf alveg bara vibrato og...
Okay.
Meira, okay. Og alveg bara, þú veist, ossalega, þú veist, Mata Hari. Þetta þannig lag, sko.
Það alveg rétt.
Svona næstu því of, skilur við? Já. Má alveg vera, þú veist, svolítið svona... Okay.
Well, I picked up her uses of intervals, for instance, fifths, and that's very traditional in Iceland and actually very unique. Icelandic folk songs often use these interval of fifths throughout, you know, the whole song, and she uses that in her pieces. That makes it very Icelandic. For instance, in The Hunter, the 2 cellos, they are playing 2-bar motive. And, you know, one of them plays the lower note, then the other cellist plays it a 5th above. And there, when you hear that, that's just right away, you know that's Icelandic.
I wrote a song called Hunter, and it's based on what my grandmother told me on Christmas about 2 different types of birds who are birds that always have the same nest all their lives, like swans. And they always have the same partners all life. And then there are birds that travel all the time, and they always have different partners all the time. And kind of like to make a conscious decision to stay a hunter. It kind of ended up being a little bit of a bolero, I guess. Maybe because it's Spain. That's the only song with a string arrangement I asked Deodato to do completely.
One of the notes that we discussed maybe trying a figure such as a bolero, you know, Ravel's bolero. In the course of the recording, we decided to exaggerate certain aspects of the string parts by having the strings doing sliding notes and kind of sluggish and slurring.
It's so lovely, one person could do a solo on top. One person could do a solo on top.
When she sends me something, it's pretty much done. What I understand, and that I was correct in understanding it that way, is that she really wants a color. She really wants the humanizing factor into tracks that are basically, how do you say, sequenced using different sounds or using electronic sounds.
It's good also if we put one take down and have that as well. We come tomorrow and we can listen to it.
Okay.
Yes.
And then we know what to fix,
Absolutely.
if that works or not. But at least we put it down. Okay.
But I don't
work quite a lot with QI20. That's a different machine, but same size. And you have 8 tracks and 100 noises. And you can make as many songs as you want. And a lot of my tunes for the last 4 years I wrote on that. It's so incredibly convenient. Put the batteries in and you can take it. You can write on the airplane or your grand's house on the top of a volcano, or in a club, or in a tube. But this is a different machine. This is like a sampler. Mark Bell bought this one, and he's just teaching me it.
It was just a way of capturing like noises, like say acoustic instruments or other noises, but then being able to change the pitch of them, like to make them any noise into like music. Then like could be a door shutting for a drum sound.
What I'd love to do live is kind of put a lot of effects on my voice. I made a conscious choice that the beats for this album will be very simple, almost naive, but still very natural, but very explosive, like they're still in the making, which for me is very much Iceland. And we would collect very slowly over a period of almost a year, a library of noises. Iceland is geographically probably the youngest country on the planet. It's still changing and growing and very raw. A lot of the eruptions at least a few hundred years ago, then the lava was very thin and went over a big area very quickly. And it went over lakes. And steam broke through because of the pressure, through the new lava. And they made little hills. So there's a lot of energy here. I wanted the beats to be like this. Obsessed with electricity. My dad's an electrician, and my grandfather too. And I've been obsessed since I was a kid with people like Stockhausen, Kraftwerk, Brian Eno. Electricity has always existed, and it's not just a phenomenon of this century. And it's always been in thunder and lightnings, and in Iceland, the Thorshammer, And acupuncture has been around for 1,000 or 2,000 years. Electricity and equipment are just tools. Instead of wood or leather or metal and all these things that we so far made music out of, stroking a string, we're using electricity and to make for the air. For me, that is probably what I would call techno. I find it so amazing when people tell me that electronic music has not got soul, and they blame the computers. They got their finger and point at the computer. It's like, there's no soul here. It's like, you can't blame the computer. If there's not soul in the music, it's because nobody put it there. And it's not the tool's fault.
You think you deny me of something. Well, I I've got plenty. You're the one who's missing out, but you won't notice until after 5 years. If you live that long, you'll wake up all loveless. I dare you to take me on. I dare you to show me your pulse. I'm so bored of cowards that say they want, then they can't tender.
There is like a purpose behind it where the drums are really hard and then the voice is beautiful. It's just like the contrast. For something to be beautiful, something's got to be, you know, ugly. If everything's beautiful, then, you know, nothing's beautiful.
You can't handle love, baby. You can't handle love. Oh, it's obvious you can't handle. I dare you.
When you first meet an Icelander, sometimes they are cold. But then, when they warm up to you, they are very fiery. We are very fiery people.
Anita! You are in all these different moods through 1 week. You are grumpy, you're cheerful, you're stupid, you're delicate, you're complicated, you're moody, and of course there's a song for every occasion, you know.
Joy is the hardest thing of all to put across, whether you're a painter or a filmmaker or whatever you do, you know. And it's easy to paint with black. It's easy to be angry, but the ecstasy, you know, in her voice is unusual.
When I've lost my cards, you deal me another hand. Even when I sleep, you're real. On your way to me, you don't have to speak. I feel this strength I get from you. I rest my head in your hands. But when I leave you only to give out to the others this state of emergency. How beautiful state of emergency is where I want to be.
Most of my work I do in my head, just when I'm doing other things. And I don't know, it's because I've been doing it for long or because I spent so many years without recording my songs. I wasn't till 27 I started recording them. That I naturally become quite organized in my head, and I got all these different sections and little cupboards and drawers. And I started that idea and I put it in a drawer, and I can come back to it a year later and it will still be there. So I walk in a room and it looks like I'm starting a song, but it's actually, in a way, I've maybe been working on it for a year.
Er þetta ekki miklu betra?
Já. Við getum farið ennþá lengra. Okay. Þetta alveg bara svona sound of music.
Já, ok.
Þú veist alveg bara svona væn. I write about one song a month. And it's usually just the theme of that month, like the soundtrack to that month in my life. This is the lyric to a song about my best mate, Yoga. But all the other pages, there's absolutely no way I'll open for you, whatever you offer me, because that's so private, it's scary. And I've got a beautiful secret code, which is called Icelandic. So you guys will never find out what it says in this.
All that no one sees, you see what's inside of me. Every nerve that hurts, you heal deep inside of me. Ooh, you don't have to speak, I feel emotional landscapes. They pass on me, confused. Can the riddle get solved? And you push me up to this state of emergency. How beautiful to be state of emergency is where I want to be. State of emergency. How beautiful to be.
Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and all the way up to 73. I'm a pop musician, and I'm making music for everyone, not for VIP or educated people or something like that. So I want to make that. It has to be pop music, you know, that everybody can relate to, and so it's a challenge. It's an experiment, and I haven't got a clue. We'll work on it, but you have to try.
Landscapes, they pass on me. The riddle gets solved, and you push me up to this state of emergency. How beautiful to be state of emergency is where I want to be. State of emergency.
Next week, the South Bank Show reviews the work of author Ian Banks.
The South Bank Show, in association with the Sunday Telegraph, the art of a perfect Sunday.